genre.
Back to The Doctor's Companion presents Doctor Who The Long Way Round, the weekly podcast where we review and discuss every episode of Doctor Who, one doctor at a time. I'm Cass Fredrickson.
I'm Nick Jimenez.
And I'm Scott Corelli.
And today on the show we'll be discussing A Christmas Carol, the 11th Doctor's 11th story.
Yeah. The 2010 Christmas special. And
Christmas 2010.
Yes, and largely considered the greatest Christmas special of all of Doctor Who. This one, of course, written by showrunner Stephen Moffat, directed by Toby Haynes. As we talked about last season, Toby Haynes was hired based on his impressive work on the Series 5 finale. And his run would then continue with the Series 6 premiere. With a 5-episode banger of an unbroken run.
And then he's out.
And then he's out forever. I don't think has ever been topped. And may never be topped. I don't know.
I'm never letting you do that to me again.
But yeah, so as production on Series 5 was wrapping in spring of 2010, Stephen Moffat agreed to continue the annual tradition of Doctor Who Christmas specials that had begun in 2005. But because the previous Christmas special, The End of Time, had been darker than usual because it led to the 10th Doctor's regeneration, Moffat wanted to go all in on his first special and create the most Christmassy Christmas special ever, choosing to adapt the Dickens classic with the redemption of a cold-hearted miser and the Doctor using time travel in order to become the representation of the ghosts that change his ways. On April 14th of 2010, Moffat was in the United States doing a promotional junket with Matt Smith and Karen Gillan, the very famous American promotional junket from Series 5 that I just remember obsessively following because I was so excited for this show to premiere. But I remember like the big deal when they went to New York and all of that stuff. So they're on April 14th. They're at the airport on their way back to England when a volcano in Iceland erupted. And erupted so hard that it actually grounded all international flights. And as a result of that, Moffat had to like go to his hotel room and sort of like work from the hotel room that they were kind of like stuck in, waiting for the flights to open up again. And he was like, well, I guess I really need to start writing that Christmas special that I said I was going to do because we need to shoot that soon and pre-production needs to start going. So, yeah. Okay. But unfortunately, he was in LA in the like nearing summer, still spring, but nearing summer. And he was like, this is the least Christmassy shit I have ever had to do. And I will say this to Stephen Moffat, welcome to it, because that's what we just did.
Hey, wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so he was like really struggling to get this right. So instead he basically like had to hypnotize himself by cranking the AC up as high as it would go in his room. And playing a playlist on iTunes of nothing but Christmas carols. And he just willed himself into Christmas vibes and started writing A Christmas Carol there in the hotel room. He said that he just needed to approximate Christmas the best he could. He stated that once he got into the mood, he had never been so excited about writing anything, and talked about how he would just like people would hear him in the hallway like laughing maniacally as he was like typing out A Christmas Carol in his hotel room. And he completed his first draft 2 weeks later. Therein created maybe one of the best Christmas specials of all time, let alone Doctor Who Christmas specials. Let's see. His childhood fear of sharks, which specifically his childhood fear of sharks rising out of the water to attack people on land. Which was inspired by a nightmare that he had as a child after seeing Jaws, is clearly the inspiration for the flying shark in this particular story. Also, throughout series 5, 3 individuals have been sharing the producer's role, but all 3 had now moved on to other projects. So for this particular story, a producer named Sane Wallenberg came aboard the show on an interim basis as the production searched for a permanent producer for series 6. Also changing was Michael Pickwoud or Woud. Yeah, Woud. I don't know. Apologies. Took over as production designer from Edward Thomas, who had been the production designer on Doctor Who since the program's return in 2005. Pickwoud took over and basically with this story, another guy had taken over for Edward Thomas in like the latter half of series 5, named Tristan Peatfield. He basically did the final recording block, and then Pickwoud took over with this story. And Pickwoud previously, I guess he was like his big like claim to fame up to that point was doing the production design on the 1987 cult classic Withnail and I, which does in fact have a killer production design. Just full of like character and vibes, that movie. And also features a future Doctor in the form of our boy, our
Peter
Big Finish
Capaldi.
boy. Yeah.
Paul McGann.
Yeah, Paul McGann, not Peter Capaldi. But similar vibes, because as we all know, Peter Capaldi in the 80s was in a punk band. So, you know.
Who's the other guy? Who's his buddy?
What is his name? He's the guy in The Snowmen.
Yes. Richard E. Grant.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And Saltburn. Yes. Richard E. Grant.
Yes. Mr. Saltburn. John Saltburn.
Yes. Mr. Saltburn, actually like the polar opposite of his Withnail character.
Yeah. Mr. Saltburn.
Yeah. But yeah, so, and you know, it's so funny because I didn't know that. I didn't know that about the production design of this season of Doctor Who. But now, like, I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's why series 6 has like a very like a distinctively different vibe from series 5. And I think it's that production design changing, that switchover, I think.
There's like like a textural difference to season 6.
I think so, yeah. And I also just think of series 6 as like warmer than series 5, just like temperature, color wise,
like
feels
brown,
like
yellow.
It's more brown and red, like it's like auburn.
What do you think?
Yeah, because the like series 5, like especially like because I always think of like the 11th Hour, like the color palette for that is so cool, like it's blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like this too, A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, that's true.
Like when I think of this era of the show, I think of like blue and white and cool, and then this is kind of like a bridge into that kind of warmer, more fairy tales season 6.
Yeah, because I think about like, you know, all of the stuff with Michael Gambon is like very cool colors, but like all the stuff on the honeymoon ship is very warm, and is like kind of, you know, there's a lot of like orange and like just a warmer palette where it's like, oh yeah, that's what series 6 looks like. And like, yeah, all of the stuff, all of the more Christmas Carol-y stuff tends to be like cooler. So it is like a really nice transition to the new look of the show. Speaking of the production design, the bridge of the Thrasymachus. How do you say this? I don't know. Did we ever hear it? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we don't ever hear it out loud, or if we do, it's like they say it like, this is the starship, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, right. And you're like, that's all you get. But anyway, the honeymoon ship. The honeymoon ship, the bridge of it was designed to evoke the Starship Enterprise because Haynes was a massive Star Trek fan and was like, this would be a really cool thing to do. And now it's just so funny that has now continued to follow him throughout his career, having directed the very Star Trek inspired episode of Black Mirror and is now directing a Star Trek movie.
Good for him.
Yeah. I just think that's really cool. So anyway, let's see, three-time Laurence Olivier Award winner, the late great Michael Gambon was chosen for the role of Catherine Sardik because of the combination of his roles as the violent mobster Albert Spica in 1989's The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, and the warmth he displayed as Albus Dumbledore in Harry Potter. Which had the added effect of like Stephen Moffat being like, everyone is going to know who he is. Like every child watching the show is going to know that's Dumbledore and will know I have to just hold out that this guy's going to change. And I just think that's kind of neat. I just think it's neat that like just casting an actor in a role can do so much for the sort of like meta text of the thing that you're making, which I just think is really, I don't know. I just think that's neat.
Well, there's something very, we call it a Christmas special.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, there's something very presentational about that. And like one thing that's cool about the way they Moffat wrote the show is he was very conscious of like the living room experience of like, okay, it's going to be Christmas Day. People are going to be watching this with like their families. And like, so that meta text actually kind of helps because you can imagine people like getting ready for or sitting down and like, oh, Michael Gambon, Dumbledore.
Yeah, absolutely. He was also the second knighted actor to ever be on Doctor Who. And to this day, I believe there have only been 4 in total, which is pretty cool, I guess. I don't know.
Ian McKellen and the Snowmen.
Right. He was the 3rd, I believe. And then let me see if I can find the other, like the list I had. I didn't write it down. I just, while we were mentioning
Sir James Corden.
Yes, of course. Just give it time. Give it time.
Yeah.
Let's see. Second. Oh, the first was Derek Jacobi, the master. Or like, the not master or whatever. And then Ian McKellen, and then the 4th was, of course, Sir John Hurt. So
of course,
those were the 4 guys. Okay, let's see. Where did I leave off? Significant challenge for this was finding someone to play Abigail Pettigrew, given the fact that the story's climax would hinge on her singing ability. So an early idea was for the actress to mime along to a vocal track. So their thought was, well, okay, let's just try and find who we want to sing that, because that will then help. We'll find an actress based on who is going to sing the song. And so then they find, the opera singer, what is her name? Katherine Jenkins. She once sang for Pope John Paul II and at Westminster Cathedral. When they met with her, they just liked her vibe so much. They were like, hey, have you ever thought about acting? And she was like, no. And they're like, I think we're just going to have you play the whole role. And she was like, what? Like, because she had literally never acted before in her entire life. And so she was very nervous about doing this, but she ended up accepting the role. And I think she's great in this. Not just singing, but like, her performance is really, really great. So kudos to her for stepping up, I guess, and doing this. Finally, the transmission of A Christmas Carol on Christmas Day 2010 eclipsed The 11th Hour as the most watched 11th Doctor story at that point. And in fact, during the remainder of Smith's tenure, only the 50th anniversary special in 2013 would attract more viewers. So this was kind of the tippy top for him.
Wow.
Because, you can barely count the 50th anniversary special as like, the top of his stuff. Because it's like, there's a lot of stuff going on with that thing. But yeah, this is like, when we say this is peak Doctor Who, like we kind of mean it. Like this was peak Doctor Who. This little spot that we're in right now.
And I want to second what you said earlier, Scott. I too vividly remember aspects of that promotional tour. It felt like a victory lap, and it was crazy, and the novelty seeing like Doctor Who stuff on Times Square or like in Entertainment Weekly and stuff like that.
Yeah. Because it was like, because I think at this time, right, like this was before this, all the Series 4 stuff had all aired on Sci-Fi Channel. And this was now going to be BBC America. And so it was like a brand new, like, yeah, we were an afterthought on the Sci-Fi Channel. We were basically like a syndicated show to them, but now we're on our own channel in America, and we're gonna bust out, we're gonna really like ham it up this time and
three
see how
young
far
leads.
see how far we can take this
a
American
hot Scottish showrunner.
Yeah. Who look, he's hot because he looks like Sabalom Glitz.
Like he's always got a secret.
Oh my god.
Anyway, so A Christmas Carol, it almost feels silly to ask this, guys, because it's
how many times have we talked about this one?
How many times have we talked about this story? But how was it, I guess, specifically to revisit this at the tail end of spring? What was it like, everybody?
I mean, this is still like the Christmas special for me. And I, like I mentioned in the group chat before we were recording, like this episode makes me cry like clockwork. Twice. Like when she sings in like the ice basement or whatever, like she opens her mouth and like that song comes out, I'm like in tears. And so even though that it's like May when we're recording this, this episode still rules. I love it dearly.
Yeah.
I think like all the great Christmas specials, it sort of it gets richer with age. Every year you come back to it, and you are unloading what life has given to you since the last time you saw it. It, aspects of it hit different, but there's also the comfort quality, and like, I am transported back into Christmas 2010, which was like, my first semester home from college, and that was actually when I first met my first Whovian friends. Like I remember like making friendships with people because like, oh my gosh, you have like the Vincent Van Gogh TARDIS exploding on your dorm wall. Like, you like Doctor Who? Like, oh, I like Doctor Who. And then getting so hyped because the show had never been better. So we were also like, happy about it. So it's an emotional watch for many reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And watching it this time, I was like, man, after reading that story about Stephen Moffat, like just cackling in his hotel room, I was like, yeah, I get it. I think I'd be doing the same thing if I was making something so goddamn impeccable. Like it's kind of crazy. Like the stakes are so well set up. Yeah, like the whole setup to like the Doctor doing a Christmas Carol on someone, the way that he sees the possibility for redemption, and then is like shouting like they're Christmas carols, and oh, and just like, oh, buddy, you're in for it. Here we go. Like, like that whole thing. And then just the structure, taking the structure of A Christmas Carol, which, is always, you always forget because it's always like, oh yeah, it goes to past, present, future. But I think, I always forget that, like, while that's true, technically, it's way heavier in the Christmas past, right? Like, that's like the majority of that part of the story is Christmas past. And then you get a little slice of present and then like a little hint of future. And then we move on. And the way that is structured so heavily with the past and like the multiple Christmases and the whole, the fact that he walked back the Christmas, like the Doctor being all three ghosts and instead changed it so that it's like the ship being the present and the himself being the future. Like, oh my, that moment is the moment that I get like full body chills every time it happens. Cause you're like, oh my God, that's so fucking good. Like, cause it's infuriatingly good. Cause you're like, yeah, of course. God, that's so good. So, I'd be cackling too, Moffat, if I had been writing this. I'd be like, God damn it, this is really good.
And there's a joy to this whole episode. It's an episode that loves that it exists.
Oh yeah. The vibes are just off the charts, impeccable in this.
Well, because we were talking last time about how Big Bang and Pandorica opens was like felt like a victory lap, and this feels like a victory lap of the victory lap.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like a bonus prize that we got just for being good fans all year.
Yeah. No, you're right. It really does. Because it's also like, I was thinking like watching the cold open and getting to like Amy's line of like, it means it's Christmas, and like, meow. And that whole thing. I was like, wow, that's a lot like the cold open to Big Bang, where like the thing opens and it's her.
All right, kid.
And you're like, yeah, all right, kid, strap in. Like it's a very similar cold open.
And I had the thought to Scott to dive right into our recap. That cold open with like they're on the ship, Christmas is canceled, and then the doors open and Amy steps out in her iconic like police girl, call girl. It is a very Star Trek movie move.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
Like a big rock and roll, like, these characters, let's do it.
Yeah. Like the very controversial opening of Into Darkness, which is very entertaining, but also is like, what are you doing? This
morally
is
reprehensible.
This isn't Star Trek.
And then the Come Along Pond thing is also iconic, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Man. Yeah, I love this cold open, and it's just like the way that it sets up the stakes of like, yeah, there's 4,000 people on this ship, and he's like, yeah, die in a fire. I don't give a shit. Like you're like, fuck, my God. Yeah, and the way they bring in that very like famous Scrooge line about like the surplus population, it's oh man, like it's really clever. It's really clever,
I share it every year, invariably, at some point during the holiday season. But Cass, what do you think of Michael Gambon's like opening monologue or voiceover?
I think about the line halfway out of the dark like a lot, especially around the holiday. Like that is like, it's just become like so synonymous with like how I celebrate. I love that. I'm like so mad about like the fact that like Moffat's so good at encapsulating things in words like that. Like it's like I don't know.
No, it's the same energy as like the thing about a hug is that you're hiding your face from the other person. And you're just like, oh, that's so true of like the human experience.
Yeah, I think he's just really good at like singling out things, very obvious things that people aren't really noticing about stuff. Like that's, I mean, that's like the basis of a lot of his episodes where he's just like, You know what's scary? Shadows. Scary. And you're like, I guess they are. I've never really thought about that before, you know? Yeah. It's just like, that's
Cracking
his
the
thing.
wall.
Yeah.
Cracking the wall in it.
Right. Yeah.
Makes you
That's
think.
just his thing. I don't know. He's like,
Weird.
imagine trying not to blink. It'd be fucked up, right? I'm like, yeah, it would be. Shit.
So yeah, we were introduced to Kazran Sardik, played by Michael Gambon. We are introduced to a member of the surplus population that has been frozen for decades, and the family's like, "Oh, please, Mr. Kazran Sardik, please, for one more Christmas." Like, get the fuck out of my fucking house. And then, speaking of peak Who, I think this is peak 11. I think this is his best scene as the Doctor.
I think Moffat tries to find ways to return to this, to top this going forward. He's like constantly, I think, trying to top this scene. And he never quite does. And I think that's how we end up drifting into that Cat in the Hat Doctor that the 11th Doctor kind of becomes in his later years. Because
I remember
with the next Christmas special.
I was going to say, Scott,
yeah.
I think that was when we kind of coined the phrase of when we kind of recreate this moment with the kids.
Yeah.
And that's like, is he just going to be doing this now? Is this just part of his...
Right. Yeah. It's just never as perfect as it is here. Because it's just so, I don't know. It's just so ubiquitous of like what he is. Which is like the whole thing. Like I was on a rooftop at Christmas and I saw a chimney and I thought, what the hell? And you're like, yeah, that's this guy. Like that's his thing.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
And going back to like the Christmas break 2010 of it all, in the moment watching this for the first time on Christmas night, it felt like, oh, I'm seeing my best friend again. He's back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it takes. I looked at the timestamp and it takes like 6 minutes, almost 7 minutes to get to him in this. So it's a really like big. It's a big introduction at that point. I think
that's a rock and roll move.
Yeah. Oh hell yeah,
rock and roll dude.
Yeah.
We learned that Kazran's family tamed the skies during the planet's history, and so he owns the sky the way that like a land baron owns like property. And so yeah, like Scott said, that he's like, hey, so 4,000 people are gonna die in your cloud bill, and he's like, I don't give a fucking shit about no 400 people. And what
he's like, they're gonna what's gonna happen if I don't let them through? They're gonna crash. Well, that's a sort of landing.
Yeah. And what I really appreciated watching it this time, and I appreciate it every year, but like part of why this works as well as it does is Moffat and Michael Gambon let Kazran be really smart and like on his toes, and it's not easy. He doesn't make it easy for the Doctor and Amy and the ship. So when you get that catharsis at the end, you feel like you really earned it, because he doesn't feel like a dumbed down, watered down version of a Scrooge archetype.
Right. And I just I love the setup of him as a Scrooge archetype, because he has all the archetypes, but they're like, and you know, Scrooge is a landlord, like that's what he is, and so now he's like a Sky Lord, and it's like. And it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, the difference, I guess, between those two things is like no one's dying in A Christmas Carol, like beyond, like, I think, isn't there like a brief mention about like they're not paying their bills, so we need to evict them, but it's Christmas Day, and he's like, yeah, okay, I don't give a shit.
And like the poor, he doesn't care about the poor houses because like we're all gonna die, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but like this being so specifically this starship with 4,000 people on board.
The president calls him.
Yeah. And he's like, I make the rules. It's my sky, bitch.
And then the little boy of the family throws a rock or something, or a shoe or something at Kazran. And Kazran makes the move to strike the boy, but he relents. He shows mercy. And that is where the Doctor has his first eureka moment of like, you are not beyond redemption. There's a little bit of good in you.
Yeah. You're already halfway through the dark. I can tell.
Yeah. He does some light. Sure, he full on pretends to be Sherlock Holmes in a next year or in a couple Christmases from now. But this, but we just get the quick like, oh, your father, the chair's over here and your father's picture and the Christmas tree in the picture, but no Christmas tree IRL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's
I know we mentioned. No, please.
I was just gonna say, I was like, that's interesting because I do wonder now in like retrospect if that was him like playing around with that of like the Sherlock of it all and how big that show had become in the same year, or the year before or something like that. I forget exactly. Did it premiere in 10 or 9? 9 or 10? 9?
10 feels right for some reason, but
okay.
I don't. Yeah,
I just don't remember. But in any event, yeah, I'm wondering if he's like playing with that like expectation at that point, where it's like I'll just do a little reference to Sherlock here, and then begat Tumblr as a result.
Yeah,
Tumblr watched this episode and like, wait a minute.
I don't know how yet, but I feel like we should do something super Hulock related someday.
Maybe someday. Much to Cass's chagrin.
That's the day I'm absent.
Well, then it would be what's the point,
Yeah, it's true.
So the doctor is outside and we get the fish warning, my governor. Watch out for the fish. Putting on goggles.
Wait. Oh my God! You know what?
Please.
I'm sorry. Not to harp on the super Hulock thing again, but like you have the doctor doing that in this episode, and then the very next episode co-stars what's his name from Supernatural.
Oh yeah, Mark Sheppard.
So like literally this is the time that this happened.
This is the era.
This is
peak,
where
peak super Hulock.
Yeah, this birthed super Hulock is like this run of episodes. That's wild.
Because like when would you say is peak Sherlock? Like season 2?
That's a good question.
That's the start of that conversation.
Probably season 2, because I think season 3 is the start of the downfall. Because season 3 is the mustache, right? That's the one that starts with the mustache.
The Abominable Bride,
or is that season 2? You know what? I think that is season 2. That is the mustache, because I think that's when he's like, "Oh, Sherlock's dead, so I'm growing this sad man mustache."
Yeah, my Morn stash.
Right. Yeah. And then like people didn't like that, how they dealt with all of that, and I think that was the beginning of the end, was right there. So I think peak was season 1. Like the gap between season 1 and season 2, I think is when Sherlock was at its height of popularity. If my internet archaeologist remembers correctly.
Guys, we would crush a Sherlock podcast.
I would hate every minute of that.
Cass would crush really us for making them do it.
Okay, you know what? Okay, that's actually really compelling, because it's just like, we're like 3 friends. One of us hates Sherlock. We're trying to make them into a fan.
Yeah, that's the angle.
Like they're watching it. I would not. That would not be a goal of mine.
Like he's watching it for the first time. Oh no, he's seen all of it. He knows what's coming. He hates it. We're just making him do it again.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen all of it because I find it insufferable. But
okay, it doesn't end great.
Well,
it's unfortunately.
I don't mind the ending, but
it's not. Yeah,
I think the problem is that it doesn't really end. It's just like stops more or less, because they're like, we can't afford them anymore, and now they keep threatening like to do like a final like Serenity style movie that like just ends it all. They all keep talking about that.
Just Thelma and Louise off a cliff or something.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be a great ending. That's how Hannibal ended, and everybody loved that. So,
let's do it again.
Yeah. All the shippers loved how that one ended. So why not?
But they also thought they also have tried to get a third one going of those, right? Of Hannibal.
Yeah. That's
fourth season.
Fourth season. Yeah. Because there's 3 seasons of Hannibal.
Did you watch all that cast? Watch all of Hannibal?
I watched most of it. I fell off of that before it got gay, actually. So that's really funny.
Yeah. Wow. Probably because you're like, no, I've been hurt before. This isn't going to go anywhere. I know
been
this
burned
isn't
too
going to
many
go
times.
anywhere.
It's like, no, actually we are. And I'm like, damn it. Okay.
One time I bail. So
The one time I bail, they actually are playing the long game. God damn it.
The doctor has his phone call with Amy on the ship, and then he gets distracted by the fish swimming through the fog. We get like "I love new planets," which is like another like a classic 11 line, and then the delightful moment that Scott alluded to, because it's like we know that it's so he's like we were talking about how smart he is, but he's also not above the dumbness of like turn off those Christmas carols. Hold on.
I love that.
I wrote down in my notes, and then the doctor had an idea, an awful idea. The doctor had a wonderful, awful idea.
Uh-huh.
He's gonna Christmas Carol this dude.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
He says about himself.
Oh, you are going down.
Oh, I'm gonna fuck you up so bad. Christmas Carol.
I really appreciate the fact that you let us know in the background that like the genesis of this episode is around the time when like all of those flights were being grounded because of weather. And like that's the plot of this episode.
Totally.
So I'm like, oh yeah, I love that. I love like knowing that now.
Yeah, he's the volcano, and Moffat's like, if only I could Christmas Carol the volcano. Wait a minute.
So the doctor, Kazran, wakes up and sees a vlog that he made when he was 12 of a time that he was going to try and see the fish, and his dad, who is also played by Michael Gambon, interrupts, and we hear Kazran being struck as a kid, confirming that this was like a part of his childhood growing up and his like fear of his dad, that it still has like kind of a hold on him well into his old age. And the doctor's like, hey man, I found that from I did Doctor Who stuff to make you see that. We're doing a Christmas Carol. And then we get like the Moffat playing with screens, now that I think about it, like not entirely unlike Blink, where the doctor appears in the vlog of young Kazran.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm your new babysitter. And then
there's also this really interesting thing that he plays with in terms of like the whole like past, present, future of it all, which is that like you can record the past. The present can only be seen through like that like, real time conversation, and the future, because this is Doctor Who, can only be done in person. And I just think that's a really interesting thing to play with that he's doing as well. So yeah, I don't know.
It keeps it simple. And then, like a part of the episode that I like vividly remember every time I watch it is just like, as the doctor is making all of these moves in the past and endearing himself to young Kazran with like the shark and the adventure, he is now remembering it, and it is becoming Kazran's past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever said this before, but it's like, especially with the shark and the fishing rod, it's like a Chris Van Allsburg book, like the Polar Express or like Zathura,
yeah, because he's in his he literally looks like the kid from Polar Express, like in his robe and his slippers, and his Jim Jam outfit. Yeah. I also I think the thing that always gets me, I mean, I choke up a lot throughout this. It's a very emotional episode. But I think for me, it's that first view of young Kazran having so much empathy, sympathy for the shark. And that line where he's like, she tried to eat you, and he just says she was hungry. And just like that, like kills me. Every time. There's just something about the way that kid says that I'm just like, yeah, that's so. And just the fact that like he still cares so much about this shark, and he's not, despite how his father treats him, he still has like hope, and he's not this like cynical, curmudgeonly kid. Like he wants to treat people well, and he has like all this empathy. And it's just like it hasn't been beat out of him at this point, and it's just so I don't know. It just it really it wrecks me every time he says that line.
And it makes it hurt more because it widens the gulf between like that Kazran and the Kazran that the Doctor has to deal with in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
They save the shark. They're like, oh, we need a fully functional life support system. The Doctor's like, or the Doctor Kazran's like, hey, I got one of those, and we're introduced to like the surplus population,
Right.
the freezer full of debt folk.
Right.
It's dystopian.
It's very dystopian.
Yeah.
It's cool. I mean, Christmas, we're spending so much money, it's so much stress, and so it's interesting how themes of economic hardship and financial hardship are woven through a lot of Christmas stories, like Wonderful Life or Christmas Story.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
because they're always
Christmas Carol,
about like, wanting to like appreciate everything that you have, even if it's not much, like that's like, that's Christmas. And it's just so, it's so nice. I also want to like, kudos to the production design again here of just like, somehow this, the production design team like managed to create a space that is like a bunch of steampunk looking freezers full of frozen people feel Christmassy somehow. Like, like I don't know how they did that, but they did. Like it's everything feels so Christmassy. And yet like there's nothing inherently Christmassy about it. But the vibes are just impeccable. It's so good.
That makes me think of like the Nutcracker Ballet, where that has darkness and brooding and tone, like the mice and the Mouse Kingdom, and it's like it's like somehow that too is Christmassy to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
A part of the episode that always makes me emotional, especially as I get older, is like just the montage, kind of the two montages of young Kazran, the Doctor, and Abigail, and their like whirlwind Christmas is like giving Abigail like Christmas after Christmas, because it's like that's kind of how I remember good times. And when I think back of Christmas, it's like, oh yeah, those were those handful of years when those were my people, or like that's where Christmas was. And it goes by so fast, and as you remember it, it's just like this whirlwind of emotion and memories, but like you remember like the feeling of it.
Yeah. It's also
please.
It's also playing with, it's sort of like the concept of this is like reverse Girl in the Fireplace. Where it's her that is from her perspective, it's like she's just getting a bunch of days in a row where she's seeing them, but from their perspective, it's a whole calendar year, I mean, not from the Doctor's perspective, but from Kazran's. So it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things, one of those concepts that Moffat really likes to play with is, perspective, and how time travel can be different for different people. I guess he just did that with Amy as well, and Rory as the Roman. So yeah,
he just thinks it's
interesting. Yeah.
Then there's like the montage, boom, 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 and then it's like all of a sudden Kazran is like this handsome young man, and Abigail's like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm wondering, did they do every single Christmas together, or did they skip a few? Because that kid had a huge growth spurt otherwise.
I think you don't... Please.
Yeah. I think they do...
like maybe like while he's away at school or something?
Maybe, I don't know, but I thought it reads as consecutive Christmases.
Yeah, I guess he just had a massive growth spurt.
How would you feel as Abigail if they found out that they just skipped 4 years?
Yeah, I guess
you just didn't get 4 Christmases.
I guess that's
because he says every Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I think maybe we don't see everyone.
Yeah. But it is the one thing about this episode that I'm always like, wait, how old is he at this point? Because like, how did she not notice this happening?
I'm 13.
Yeah, I know. This is also the Christmas where she like makes out with him. So it's like, I don't know. It's just
because he's 12 in the first one,
right?
And then Yeah, I don't know. So he
12,
has to
13,
be like
14, 15,
18,
16,
19.
17, 18, 19. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's only 6.
All right. Yeah.
Like Padme and Bad being like, no, he's only
Yeah. Just a
14.
late bloomer, I guess. A late all at once bloomer.
Another iconic moment for me is the pool party where the Doctor gets engaged to Marilyn Monroe.
Yep.
Yep. I always forget that's in this episode. Like, for some reason, I always think of it as like a latter day, like series 6 moment. But so I just always forget that it's here.
Yeah.
But there's that reference early on with like the photo, with the Father Christmas photo.
Yeah, that's true. But then, much like Scrooge, I mean, to me, one of my favorite things about Christmas Carol that like it hurts, but it resonates so much with the human experience is like the regret of Scrooge, because there's that moment where he pulls back from his wife or his girlfriend, and in this he gets so close, and then he rebukes and puts his guard up, and we get the great line of like, oh, I've changed, and the Doctor's like, not as much as I hoped.
Yeah.
Go back to like, he's not going to make this easy.
Yeah, because and I like how they kind of like illustrate that moment in like the set dressing, because like as soon as his past starts changing, like there's the portrait of Abigail where the portrait of his father was, and then like after he learns that she's dying and he can't spend any more time with her in the way that he was hoping, like he looks and then it's the portrait of his father again.
Yeah.
And it like hits hard because it's
Yeah.
like, oh damn it, like we're close.
Yeah.
It's such a smart
close.
visual, like keeping you, reminding you what the stakes are in an emotional way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We get Ghost of Christmas Present now, where Amy's like, oi, I'm Amy. Rory hologram is like, I know you're a hologram, but please don't sleep with my wife. I must beg. And Amy plays, all the 4,000 passengers on the ship are singing A Christmas Carol. And it made me think about the role singing plays in Doctor Who. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, you really remember it. Like, we talked really recently about Gridlock.
Yeah.
People being moved by communal singing.
Right, in our bracket episode. And then there's the there's like isn't there there's like a song in Rings of Akaton, right?
Yeah.
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 Then the Goblin song.
Right, of course. And of course, who could forget the Goblin song?
Yeah. The really moving choral version of the Goblin song at the end.
The Goblin song that's just like the equivalent of like that song in Jabba's Palace in the special edition.
Pleased to say how diddly did you.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I mean, like, yeah, it all boils to it's so great how Matt Smith plays it, of like, he's sorry that he has to do this to Kazran because he knows how much it's going to hurt him. But like the last gambit is like, I have to show the young Kazran what he becomes, and then like him embracing his and like the layers of that are just so agonizing but so beautiful.
Yeah. Yes, it's good. And unlike Time Cop, meeting your past self does not turn you into an amorphous blob that breaks time forever.
That'd be horrible if that was the Doctor's plan. Like, sorry, I had to time cop you.
You must both cease to exist. God.
I time copped him, Amy. There's nothing to be done. Merry Christmas.
I've never seen that movie. And you just look over at Rory and he's just haunted.
Well, this is what it is. This is how it ends. And then, God, yeah, everything is set up so well, of like the cost of like, I'm not going to open the door because as soon as I open Abigail, that's her last Christmas and then she'll die. And it's like, do we keep the people we love frozen? But to have them in our lives is to say goodbye to them, It's, yeah, man. Yeah. Like it's like, you're moved by it as an audience member, but then as a writer, you are kind of like, fuck, like the craft of it,
Yeah. It's great. And then they use the sky shark to like Santa Claus through the sky in a sled.
I appreciate that such an emotionally devastating episode does end on such a whimsical, fun visual.
Yeah.
The thing about the shark too is I like that it becomes the solution to the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, 'cause it's still got the screwdriver, so it's just like, oh yeah, I'll just use it as a microphone, and then this is how we'll do it. And I'm just like, that's so silly, but it like I love that you have like made it like set it up so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of, the series to come, but I think we all have mixed feelings about whether it's Mysterio or the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, and like he makes moves that attempt this, but just like there was just firing on all cylinders this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm also just like really glad that this came together so quickly for Moffat. Because he's about to really go through it. Starting in season 6, about like, oh man, I have bitten off more than I can chew trying to show run 2 series simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so it's nice. I'm glad that he got grounded. I'm glad that volcano went off. I hope no one died, but I'm glad that volcano went off so that he could be grounded in a hotel room and not have to think about anything except this for a couple weeks. I think that's yeah, because he's about to he's about to have a rough time. As we'll get into.
It's a little bittersweet. I don't know. It's like, this is Piku, but then also it's like, you're looking up ahead and you're like, oh, we really are gonna have to watch Curse of the Black Spot soon.
Yeah. God, what a steep fall, man.
Mm-hmm.
We get another up though right after with the doctor's wife, but then
that's right.
Yeah, but then it's like,
is that season 6?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the 4th episode of season 6. Yeah. And then like right after that, you find out that like Amy's a ganger and all that shit. Yeah, this is the last time that we're with real Amy until A Good Man Goes to War.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Oh man, we're in for it.
Just long enough for the Big Bang to happen.
I'm still mad about that.
It's very, I have X-Men 97 on the brain listener, but it's very like Madeline Pryor, Jean Grey in retrospect.
Yeah. Now that we know how, like, literally we know how River Song was conceived, which is like her parents like playfully like cosplaying like their favorite versions of each other.
Oh yeah, that's what was happening, wasn't it? Huh?
Yeah, right. And just like that is how River Song was conceived. It's like, wow, River Song as a character makes so much more sense now. Like her entire personality.
Oh my god.
I was born of cosplay and kink.
Oh god.
Yeah. Oh man. Anyway,
Christmas Carol. What
Christmas
an episode.
Carol. That we've talked about it so many times. I'd like to say that'll probably be the last time we talk about that episode in detail on this show, but I guess you never know what the future holds for us.
Yeah.
River, Joni Mitchell. It's a Christmas Carol. It's a famous Christmas song. Wish I had a river.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Think about.
I don't know if I've heard that, or if I have, I don't know it by name. I guess. I'll have to look that up. Anyway,
so
that's
next week.
Yeah, that's a Christmas Carol. Next week, we're going back to Peter Capaldi, and we're talking about not a Christmas episode. We're talking about a heist episode called Time Heist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an episode that I think all of us have not a lot of memories of before we get to revisit it next week.
Which is funny.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nick over here spoiling the fact that we've already watched it.
Well, we already have watched it.
Yeah, that's true. Nick doesn't like to lie to you. I do for the
well,
story,
no, I mean, like,
for the
For the
narrative.
podcast.
We had even seen it back in 2014.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, Time Heist next week. In the meantime, Discord link is in the show notes. So is the Patreon link. Check those out if you're interested. Like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. And we will talk to you in the Space Vault. Bye.